A 62-year-old mailman made a 240-pound Dojo owner tap out in 41 seconds, and the security camera above the mats counted every one of them. Freeze that image. Hold it. Now go back 3 weeks. You don't belong here. This is an elite facility, not a loading dock. Bram Hollister's voice bounced off the marble front counter of Hollister Elite Martial Arts and hit every corner of that strip mall lobby. Parents in the waiting chairs looked up from their phones. A 10-year-old stopped mid-kick on the mats, foot still hanging in the air, and Earl Pettigrew, mail tub still on his hip, stood there with his 8-year-old grandson beside him, both of them just trying to ask about a beginner class. The boy's name was Milo. He had a flyer in his hand, folded soft from being carried in his pocket for a week straight, corners gone gray with handling. He'd asked his grandpa 4 times to bring him here. Today was finally the day. Bram came around the marble counter like he owned the air in the room, because in his mind he did. Teeth-whitened smile, gi jacket pressed sharp, a gold watch that caught the overhead lights every time he moved his wrist. He looked at Milo's sneakers, then at Earl's blue postal uniform, then back at Milo like the boy had tracked something in on the bottom of his shoes. Off the mat, kid. That mat is for clients. Bram snapped 2 fingers. At the entry mat like he was correcting a puppy that had wandered somewhere it shouldn't. Clients only. Milo stepped back, so fast he nearly tripped over his own grandfather's boot. He looked up at Earl with the kind of face that asks a grown man to fix something without a single word being spoken. Earl didn't raise his voice. He never did. He set the mail tub down slow, careful, like it held something precious instead of catalogs and cable bills, and a stack of renewal notices addressed to the man standing in front of him. And that's when it happened. The one thing in that whole lobby that actually mattered. Earl squared his shoulders to Bram. Not straight on, angled. Weight split evenly between both feet, hands loose at his sides, chin low, breathing steady and slow. A blade stance. The kind you don't learn in a strip mall gym for a monthly membership fee. The kind that gets carved into muscle so deep it comes out, even when a man is just standing still, defending his grandson with nothing but posture and a level pair of eyes. On the mats, 20 feet away, Noah Tran stopped his drill mid-rep, fist frozen halfway through a combination he'd thrown 1,000 times before. He'd seen that exact stance exactly once before. In grainy old training footage his uncle had shown him one night. Hand-to-hand combatives instruction from a decade back. Soldiers moving in pairs under fluorescent gym lights, half a world from here. Not a martial arts stance. A soldier's stance. And here it was, standing in a strip mall lobby on a Tuesday afternoon, worn by a 62-year-old man in a postal uniform like it, had never once left his body in 40 years. Nobody else in that room clocked it. Not Bram. Too busy enjoying the sound of his own volume bouncing off the ceiling tiles. Not the parents in the waiting chairs. Too embarrassed to make eye contact with anyone. Staring hard at their phones like the screens might rescue them from the awkwardness. Just Noah. And the moment passed in under 2 seconds, swallowed whole by Bram's next insult. Take your flyer and your tub and get back to your route, old man. This isn't the post office. Bram smiled the smile he used in his promo videos. All teeth, no warmth behind it, the kind of smile that photographs well and means nothing. Some people just don't belong on these mats. Earl picked his tub back up. He put a hand on Milo's shoulder and walked him out the glass door. Past the gold-plated belt display case gleaming under recessed lighting. Past the wall-sized black belt certificate framed like a piece of the True Cross. Gold seal catching the light just like Bram's watch did. He said nothing, not one word. The door chime rang behind them, cheerful and stupid. The same little bell that rang for every customer who came in to hand Bram their money. But somewhere behind that silence, something had already started moving, something that would take 3 weeks, 1 open mat day, and one very old habit of delivering the mail to fully arrive. And when it did, it would land on Bram Hollister with a weight he never saw coming, in front of every single person he had ever wanted to impress. But before we continue, subscribe now and tell us in the comments where you are watching from and what time you saw this video. Tonight's story is one you will never forget. Here's what nobody in that lobby knew. Here's what the flyer in Milo's hand didn't say, what the postal uniform didn't advertise, what 40 years of quiet had buried so deep, even the neighbors had stopped asking questions about it. 2 lines of young men in a battalion formation. Sun coming up hard and orange over Fort Benning, a name called out Pettigrew, and a hand going up fast. No hesitation, no second guessing. 75th Ranger Regiment, 3 deployments, back when the evening news called them by different names. Different countries. Different maps most people never learned to pronounce. A body that learned to move efficient, low, quiet, because loud men in his old line of work didn't always come home to their own front porch. Then the job after the job. Years spent teaching hand-to-hand combatives to soldiers half his age, showing them how a smaller, calmer man beats a bigger, angrier one every single time. If he understands leverage and breath and patience instead of ego and volume. Earl didn't talk about any of it. Didn't need a certificate on a wall to prove it happened. The Army doesn't hand out certificates the way strip mall dojos do. It hands out scars and quiet and a stance that never fully leaves your feet, no matter how many years pass or how many mailbags you carry. And one more fact, small and easy to miss. Sitting right there under everyone's nose the whole time. Earl Pettigrew had delivered the mail to this strip mall for 11 years. Every business along that row. Every envelope, every catalog, every certified letter that needed a signature. Including every single piece of mail that had ever arrived for Hollister Elite Martial Arts. He'd never opened one. He never would. That wasn't who Earl Pettigrew was, not for anybody, not even a man who'd humiliated his grandson in front of a room full of strangers. But he'd carried them, quarterly for years, held them in the same steady hands that had carried a rifle, then a training pad, then a mail tub, all with the same unshaken grip. Hold on to that fact. It matters more than you think right now. And it's going to matter a great deal more before this story is finished. Word of what happened in that lobby got around Cedar Falls fast, the way small-town word always does. By the next morning, the regulars at the diner, 2 doors down from the strip mall, were already talking about it over coffee. Plates of eggs going cold while they hashed it out. "Heard Hollister ran off old Earl and his grandboy yesterday," one of them said, stirring cream into his cup slow. "Called him a loading dock, of all things." "Earl Pettigrew." Another regular set his fork down, frowning hard. "Man's delivered my mail since my kids were in diapers. Never said a crossword to anybody in 11 years. "That's the one." "Well, that Hollister fella's got some nerve then. Whole town knows Earl. Don't none of us know a single thing about him, come to think of it. Man just shows up, does his route, waves, moves on. Never talks about himself." That was the truth of it, plain and simple. Earl Pettigrew had spent 2 decades being the most reliably invisible man in Cedar Falls, and it had never once occurred to anyone at that diner counter to wonder why a man that quiet moved the way he did, steady, unhurried, always aware of every door in the room, without ever once looking like he was checking it. Some habits don't retire. They just go quiet and wait for a reason to wake back up. Earl walked Milo to the truck that afternoon, and the boy was quiet the whole ride home, staring out the window like he was trying to shrink himself down small enough to disappear into the upholstery. Earl didn't fix it that day. He told himself he'd let it slide, like he always did, because making a scene wasn't his way, and pride wasn't something a 62-year-old mailman needed to prove to a 35-year-old man wearing a black belt he'd bought the way other people buy car insurance. That was Earl's flaw, and it was about to cost him something he cared about far more than his own pride, his grandson's belief in him. That evening, Milo sat at the kitchen table, doing homework or pretending to, pencil hovering over the same math problem for 10 straight minutes without moving. "Grandpa," he finally said, not looking up, "are you scared of that man?" Earl set down the dish towel he was drying his hands with. He thought about it honestly before answering, the way he thought about most things. "No," he said. "I've been in rooms a lot louder than that one." "Then why didn't you say anything back?" Earl sat down across from him, slow joints that had earned the right to move that way. "Some men need to be loud to feel big," he said. "I never needed that. Doesn't mean I can't handle myself when it matters." Milo looked at him a long moment, chewing on that answer the way kids chew on things adults say and don't fully explain. He went back to his math problem without saying anything else, and Earl let him, because some things a boy has to arrive at on his own timeline, not his grandfather's. The next morning, Earl was back on his route, same as every morning for 11 years running. Same strip mall, same storefronts in the same order. The barber shop with the striped pole out front, the nail salon with the pink neon sign, the sandwich place that always smelled like fresh bread by 9 a.m., and at the end of the row, marble counter gleaming behind tinted glass, Hollister Elite Martial Arts. Bram was out front that day, arranging his sandwich board sign for the sidewalk, now enrolling, first class free. Printed in a font Earl figured cost more than his own monthly mortgage payment. When he spotted Earl coming down the block with his tub, Cap pulled low against the autumn sun. "Careful, everyone," Bram called out, loud enough for the barber and the nail salon owner both to hear through their open doors. "The government's finest is armed with coupons today." A couple of people laughed, the nervous kind. The kind of laugh that only happens because someone louder told them it was funny first. Earl just kept walking, kept sorting his stack, didn't break stride, didn't even look over. The squeak of his boots on the sidewalk kept perfect, unhurried time. Bram turned to go back inside, still grinning at his own joke, and caught the toe of his loafer on the base of his own sandwich board sign. He went down hard onto one knee on the concrete, catalog rack rattling, loud beside him. The whole sign clattering flat on its face. The barber next door, mid-haircut, laughed so loud his client had to grab the arms of the chair to keep from getting nicked. Bram picked himself up fast, dusted his knee off with 2 sharp swats, glared at absolutely nobody in particular, and marched back inside like it hadn't happened at all. Earl didn't turn around. Earl didn't need to. He never even broke stride. That was the first debt. Small, but the ledger had officially opened, and it was already keeping better records than Bram's own bookkeeper. 2 weeks passed like that. Small cruelties from Bram, tossed out like loose change. Small paybacks that never quite balanced the scale, and Earl still saying nothing, still absorbing it, still telling himself a real man doesn't need to prove what he already knows about himself to a room full of strangers. Then came belt testing day. The lobby was packed that Saturday. Parents lined 3 deep along the wall. Phones already up recording their kids' names being called out for their next rank. The smell of fresh floor wax and somebody's pre-workout powder hanging thick in the air. Kyla Reeves ran most of it. She always did. Sharp voice, patient hands. The only person on that mat who actually corrected a child's stance instead of just clapping and moving on to the next name on the clipboard. Bram floated through the crowd in his gi like a peacock, checking his own reflection in the trophy case glass, straightening his belt every few minutes for no reason anyone could see. A 10-year-old girl named Sadie stepped up for her yellow belt test. Hands shaking slightly with nerves, hair pulled back tight. She'd trained for 2 straight months. She landed every kick clean, held every stance the full count, answered every question Kyla asked her about respect and discipline without a single stumble. The room clapped for her, loud and warm. Bram stepped in before Kyla could hand her the belt off the folding table. "Sadie's technique is good," he said, loud enough for the whole waiting area to hear clearly. "But she's not quite ready for advancement. Unless Mom and Dad want to talk about our accelerated excellence package. Really speeds these things along. Gets kids where they need to be faster." Sadie's face fell in real time in front of 40 watching people, her chin dropping to her chest, her hands going still at her sides. Kyla's jaw went tight enough that a vein showed at her temple. She passed every requirement on the sheet, Bram. Every single one. The sheet's a guideline, Kyla. He smiled that same smile again, unbothered, untouchable. I make the calls here. That's how this works. Kyla didn't argue further in front of the families crowding the wall. She didn't have to. Her face did the arguing for her. And every parent in that room read it clearly. Sadie's mother leaned toward the woman next to her, voice low, but not low enough. She's been coming home crying about that man's fees since September. Mine too, the other woman whispered back. Said our daughter needed the Champions Circle add-on to test for Orange Belt. $200 for a belt. Up on the mat, Bram clapped once, sharp, moving things along like nothing had happened. Next up, we've got young Tyler testing for his green stripe. He said it, bright and easy, already pivoting the room's attention, before the sting of Sadie's moment could settle anywhere it might do real damage to his afternoon. Kyla crouched down next to Sadie, who was still standing frozen at the edge of the mat, chin trembling now. You did everything right, Kyla told her, quiet. Just for the two of them. Everything. You hear me? Sadie nodded, not trusting her voice yet, and walked back to her mother with her shoulders down. That same afternoon, Bram cut her teaching hours from 4 classes a week down to 1. Posted it cold on the schedule board, without so much as a conversation, like it was a parking ticket instead of a person's paycheck. Word moved fast in a strip mall this size. By Monday morning, 2 families were already standing at that marble counter, asking for refunds, cashback forms gripped tight in their hands, while a set of brand new sign-ups sat in the waiting chairs, watching the entire exchange happen in front of them. We just don't feel like this is the right fit anymore, Sadie's mother said, sliding the form across the marble counter, voice steady even though her hands weren't. I understand completely, Bram said, smile never slipping, already reaching for the next form before the first signature had dried. These things happen. Not everyone's cut out for elite-level training. Bram's smile stayed fixed to his face the whole time, but his knuckles went white around the pen he was holding, gripping it the way a man grips something he's afraid of dropping. Debt number 2, bigger than the first. Witnessed by exactly the people he needed most in that room. The new customers he was counting on to fill the gap the refunds were about to leave behind. He needed a win, so he decided to manufacture one, whether the mats liked it or not. 3 days later, Bram posted a promo video to the Dojo's page. Slick and overproduced. Slow-motion footage of his students sparring, dramatic music swelling underneath, his own voice laid over the top like a movie trailer narrator. Some people think they could last a minute on these mats. Mall walkers, retirees, mailmen. A laughing emoji flashed on screen. Come find out. And there, caught in the corner of one frame for less than 2 seconds, pulled straight from the Dojo's own security camera, without ever asking permission. Earl, walking past the front window with his tub, caught mid-stride, used as a punchline in a stranger's advertisement for a business he'd never once set foot inside as a paying customer. The view count climbed fast. The comments came in faster, and the very first one, from a page that ran under a faded flag logo and called itself a veterans support community, wasn't a laugh at all. Your footwork in your own promo is wrong. Weights on your heels in every clip. Who taught you? More comments piled underneath that one within the hour. Strangers zooming into freeze frames, breaking down his stance frame by frame, like it was a crime scene photo. By that evening, Bram had disabled the comments on the post entirely, and the video sat there afterward with a locked comment icon that felt, to anyone paying attention, like an admission all its own. Debt number 3. Doubled, because he'd used Earl's own image without asking. Doubled again, because the internet does not forget a bad take, no matter how fast you try to bury it. Down at the barber shop that week, the clippers buzzed steady while 2 men argued over the video. One of them holding his phone up so the barber could see the freeze frame between passes over a client's fade. Man's got no idea who he just made fun of, the barber said, not looking up from his work, comb sliding through wet hair. I cut Earl's hair once a month. Man never says 3 words about himself the whole time he's in the chair. You think that's an accident? You think that Mailman could actually fight? The barber shrugged, clippers pausing a half second. I think a man who never once needs to tell you what he can do is usually the last man in the room you want to test. Nobody in that shop knew yet how right he was. But the words hung there anyway, floating over the smell of aftershave and cut hair, waiting for the day they'd turn out to be exactly, precisely true. That was the same week Milo stopped asking. He didn't cry about it. He didn't complain, didn't make a scene of his own, the way his grandfather never would either. He just stopped bringing up martial arts at the dinner table, stopped watching the highlight reels on his tablet before bed, stopped folding that soft, gray-cornered flyer back into his pocket every morning, like a small private ritual he used to believe in without question. One night, quiet, not looking up from his plate, pushing peas around with his fork, Milo said it plain. Maybe we're not those kind of people, Grandpa. Earl set his fork down slow, the small clink of metal on ceramic the only sound in the kitchen for a long moment. He didn't answer that night. He let it sit in the room like a held breath, because he didn't have the right words yet. And he wasn't going to hand his grandson a lie just to feel better about the silence he'd let build for 3 straight weeks. But later that night, after Milo went to bed, Earl went to his closet and took out his route shirt, the same postal blue he'd worn for 2 decades, and he ironed it. Not for the next morning's route, for something else entirely. He pressed the creases sharp, corner to corner, like a man prepping a dress uniform for a formal inspection, and he hung it up careful on the closet door. And the viewer watching this story already knows exactly what that means, even if Earl himself hadn't said one word of it out loud to a single living soul. Something had been decided in that quiet house. Nobody needed to hear it spoken to know it. Here's what this story had let you believe up to this point. And here's where that belief gets taken apart piece by piece. You've been assuming Bram Hollister is a real black belt. Cruel, arrogant, insufferable, but real. A legitimate martial artist who simply has an ugly way of running a business and treating the people who pay him. That assumption is wrong. and the person who proves it wrong is the last person you'd expect. Noah Tran, alone at his kitchen table, well past midnight, unable to sleep, still turning over that comment about Bram's footwork like a stone in his shoe he couldn't shake loose. Noah pulled up an old promo photo from a dojo shoot months back. The wall-size certificate hanging behind Bram's desk in a frame the size of a door, gold seal. Calligraphy signature, the words Master. Instructor stretched across the top like a marquee outside a theater. He zoomed into the seal on his laptop screen. Something about the font looked wrong to him. Too clean, too generic. The kind of stock emblem you'd find sitting in a template library, instead of stamped by an actual martial arts federation, with a real address and a real board of examiners. He searched it, copied a phrase from the border text, pasted it into a search bar. 3 clicks later, he had his answer sitting right in front of him. Glowing on the screen, a certification mill based 2 states away. No physical dojo of its own, no verified instructors, no oversight board of any kind. Just an online form, a credit card field, and a shipping address. Pay for the advanced black belt package. Wait 6 to 8 weeks. Receive an embossed certificate suitable for framing and hanging behind a desk. Quarterly renewal fees kept your rank officially active. Like a magazine subscription that happened to come with a title attached. Noah sat there with his laptop glowing in the dark kitchen, the refrigerator humming behind him, and felt something in his stomach turn over slow and cold. Every hour of hard training Bram had ever half-supervised while filming himself in the mirror for another promo clip. Every belt test he'd gate-kept behind a payment plan dressed up as a curriculum. Every child he'd ever told wasn't ready, unless the parents opened their wallet a little wider. All of it standing on a foundation that came printed on cardstock, shipped from out of state, paid for on a recurring subscription like a streaming service, and the envelopes. Noah didn't know this next part yet, but the story does, and so do you. Every one of those quarterly renewal certificates, every glossy mailer from that out-of-state mill, had passed through the hands of exactly one person for 11 straight years. A man in a postal uniform who never opened a single piece of mail that wasn't his own, because that was never who Earl Pettigrew was going to be. Even for a man who had humiliated his grandson in front of a room full of strangers and used his image without asking. The gatekeeper of the elite facility had been the fraud in the building the entire time. The mailman he'd called a loading dock worker was the only person who had ever set foot on that property with real, tested, combat-earned training. And an institution that never once mailed anyone a certificate for money had trained him for it. Decades before Bram Hollister ever hung a shingle over a strip mall storefront. Noah closed his laptop that night and didn't sleep much at all. 3 weeks of watching Bram operate had already worn him thin, patience running out class by class. Now he had proof sitting right there in his search history, cold and undeniable, of exactly what his gut had been telling him the whole time. The cracks didn't stay quiet for long after that. Kyla, tired of watching her hours get gutted, and her students get gouged for money they didn't have, started a free Saturday morning class at the community center 2 blocks over. She posted about it once, quietly. No promo music, no slow-motion clips. Just a time and a place typed into a single community bulletin post. She showed up that first Saturday, not knowing if anyone would come at all, half expecting to run drills alone in an empty gym. Instead, cars started pulling into the lot 20 minutes early, parents unloading kids who still had their old dojo bags slung over their shoulders, patches and all. The following Saturday, half of Bram's junior class showed up on those donated mats instead of his marble floor, sneakers squeaking on old gym hardwood instead of imported flooring. A parent group organizing in a chat that had started as birthday party logistics and slowly turned into something closer to a quiet uprising, sent Bram a formal message asking for his certification lineage in writing, federation name, instructor of record, verifiable rank history going back to his very first test. His answer, when it finally came 2 days later, was a photograph of the certificate itself, just the document, framed edges and all, a font, not a name, not a federation contact, not one single verifiable fact anyone could call and confirm. And somewhere in a regional martial arts forum, a new thread appeared overnight, with a photo taken through Hollister Elite's own front window at street level. Certificate clearly visible on the wall behind the desk. The certification mill's faint watermark just barely legible in the corner, if you knew exactly where to look for it. The thread had 11 replies by morning, 40 by lunchtime. Every single reply asking some version of the exact same question: is this real or is this a joke? Bram found the thread himself 2 days later, scrolling late at night in his office chair, feet no longer up on the desk. He read every reply twice. He didn't sleep much that night either, though nobody in Cedar Falls would ever know that but him. Bram needed to answer that question loudly, publicly, and firmly in his own favor, before it answered itself without him in the room to control it. He tried the local sporting goods store first, the one that sponsored 2 youth soccer teams and a bowling league, hoping to land a banner deal that would make the forum thread look small and jealous by comparison. The owner listened to Bram's pitch for 4 full minutes, arms crossed the entire time, then asked one plain question: which federation certified you again? I like to check before I put my name next to somebody's. Bram's smile held a half-second too long before he answered. It's a specialized program. Not everybody's heard of it. The owner nodded slow, the kind of nod that means the opposite of agreement. I'll have to think on it. He never called back. That was debt number 4. Quiet, no witnesses in the room, except Bram's own reflection in the store's front window on the walk out. Noah told Kyla what he'd found 2 nights after that, sitting in her car in the strip mall parking lot after hours, engine running for the heater. Both of them talking low, even though there was nobody around to overhear. I don't know what to do with it, Noah admitted, phone screen glowing between them. The mill's website still open in a browser tab. Post it, and it looks like I'm just trying to burn the guy down out of spite. Sit on it. And Sadie's still getting told She needs an upsell to earn what she already earned. Kyla stared at the screen a long moment, jaw tight. You don't post it, she said finally. You wait. Things like this don't need help getting out. They need a stage. What kind of stage? The kind Bram builds for himself, Kyla said. He always does eventually. Man can't help it. She was right, and neither of them yet knew exactly how soon that stage was coming, or how loud it would be when it finally arrived. Noah had asked Bram once, early on, back when he still gave the man the benefit of the doubt, how he'd earned his black belt. Bram had leaned back in his office chair, boots up on the desk, and told the story like scripture. 6 years under a grand master you've never heard of, he'd said. Private lineage. Some things aren't meant for the public to verify. That's what makes it elite. At the time, Noah had nodded along, young enough to mistake confidence for credibility. Now, sitting in that cold car with the Mills website glowing on his phone, he replayed that same line in his head and heard it completely differently. Every word of it had been built to sound impressive, precisely because it could never be checked. That was the whole design. He never once showed me a single technique that wasn't already in a basic curriculum video. Noah said quietly to Kyla, I used to think that was because he was holding back the advanced stuff for later. Now, I think it's because that's all he actually knows. Kyla didn't say anything to that. She didn't need to. The heater ticked in the dashboard, and outside the windshield, Hollister Elite Martial Arts sat dark and locked for the night. Marble counter gleaming faintly under the parking lot lights, like a monument to something that had never really existed. So he announced Community Open Mat Day. Free trial classes, no obligation, cameras invited. A chance for all of Cedar Falls to see Hollister Elite Martial Arts up close and decide the ugly rumors for themselves once and for all. He rented extra folding chairs from the party supply store 2 towns over. He had Kyla's name pulled off the promotional flyer entirely, replaced with his own name, printed twice the size, bold and gold foiled. Bram had practiced the phrase Community Open Mat Day in the mirror 3 separate times before he ever posted the flyer, testing which version of his own smile photographed best above the words. He printed 200 copies, taped them to every storefront window in the row, even the barbershop, even the diner, even though the barber had told him, flat out, he wasn't putting it in his window. The lobby was standing room only that Saturday morning. Parents lined the walls 3 deep, phones already up before anything had even happened. A local news stringer with a shoulder camera stood near the door, hoping for something worth posting. Noah stood near the mats, arms crossed tight, saying nothing, watching, waiting for whatever was coming. The lobby smelled like fresh floor cleaner, and somebody's cologne applied a little too generous. Mixed under the low hum of a dozen side conversations and the occasional squeak of new sneakers on the polished matte edge. A folding chair scraped somewhere near the wall. A toddler cried once, briefly, and got hushed by an embarrassed parent. Earl came by that morning like he always did, mail tub on his hip, just there to drop the day's delivery, at the counter same as any other Saturday for 11 straight years. He hadn't come for a class. He hadn't come for anything except his route and the next envelope in his stack. Bram saw him from clear across the crowded lobby, and something in his chest lit up with exactly the wrong kind of opportunity. Here, finally, was his chance. Here was his answer to every whisper, every refund request, every anonymous thread with a photo through his own window. Humiliate the mailman again, bigger this time, in front of a packed house and a running camera, and drown out every last rumor with one loud, undeniable laugh. He climbed up onto the low platform at the edge of the mats, clapped his hands twice hard for quiet, and pointed straight across the room at Earl. "Say it with me, folks," Bram called out, grinning at the crowd, like he already owned their laughter before it even started. "Some people don't belong on these mats." A ripple of uncomfortable half-logs moved through the packed room, more nervous than amused. Somewhere near the back wall, Milo stood beside his mother, eyes going wide and scared, watching his grandfather get singled out again in front of an even bigger crowd than the first time. Bram wasn't finished. "Earl Pettigrew, come on up here. 1 minute on the mat with me. You last 60 seconds. Everybody in this room trains free for a year. My treat." He spread his arms wide for the room, playing hard to the shoulder camera by the door. "What do you say, mailman? Or does the loading dock have a schedule to keep today?" The room went quiet in that particular way. Rooms go quiet right before something happens that nobody in it can take back afterward. Earl looked across that crowded lobby at his grandson. Milo's face was doing the exact same thing it had done 3 weeks earlier at the front counter, waiting, hoping for someone to fix something with a single choice, in front of everyone, this time, instead of just family. Earl set his mail tub down on the counter, slow and deliberate, the same way he'd set it down the very first day this whole thing started. He unzipped his postal vest and folded it once, twice, 2 clean, sharp creases, and set it beside the tub like a man folding a flag at a ceremony instead of getting undressed for a fight. "Grandpa, don't!" Milo called out, small voice cutting through the quiet, scared for him in the way only an 8-year-old can be scared for the person he loves most. Earl looked at his grandson and gave him one short nod, the kind that says trust me without spending a single extra word on it. "You sure about this, old man?" Bram called from the mat, grin still fixed in place, rolling his shoulders loose like a man limbering up for an easy afternoon. Last chance to walk out with some dignity. "I've got plenty of that already," Earl said, voice even, unhurried. "I'll let you keep worrying about yours." A few people near the front let out a short, surprised laugh before catching themselves. Then he stepped onto the mat. The room that had been laughing nervously a moment ago went dead silent in an instant. Somewhere in the back, a phone got raised higher, catching better light. Near the front row, a man who'd wandered in off the street from the barber shop half rose out of his folding chair, without seeming to notice he'd done it at all. Someone near the wall whispered, low, to the person beside them, "No way," and got shushed by 3 different people at once, all of them straining to hear whatever came next. Bram grinned wider, already circling, already performing hard for the shoulder camera by the door, calling out over his own shoulder, "Watch this, everybody," and he lunged in for a big, showy hip throw, the kind that photographs beautifully for a highlight reel, and ends fast against somebody who doesn't already know how to fall. Earl's hips didn't move where Bram expected them to. His weight dropped a half-second before contact, grip finding Bram's wrist and sleeve in the same single motion, angle shifting just enough that Bram's own forward momentum carried him past his target instead of straight through it. Bram's balance broke a first, all at once, a man discovering gravity for the first time. Earl's never did. A short pivot, a controlled drop, and Bram's shoulder met the mat under Earl's calm. Settled weight instead of the other way around, the way it was supposed to go on camera. The room made a sound like it had been holding its breath the entire time and only just now realized it. Bram's chest heaved once against the mat before he pushed himself up onto one knee, breathing already ragged, sweat breaking fast along his hairline. He came up swinging his weight forward again, off balance from the start, trying to grab Earl's collar with both hands out of pure panic and wounded pride instead of anything resembling technique. Earl didn't retreat. He stepped in, angled his hips a quarter turn, and caught Bram's leading wrist before the grab ever closed, redirecting the momentum along its own line instead of fighting it head-on. Bram's own forward weight did the rest of the work for him, carrying him past center. His balance gone the moment his back foot lost the floor. Earl followed him down without ever losing his own footing, one knee settling light across Bram's shoulder blade, weight distributed even and controlled, breathing slow and steady the entire time, like a man doing paperwork instead of finishing a fight. He captured the wrist, turned it against its own joint. Just enough torque to make continued resistance its own kind of punishment. Nothing more than that. "Tap when you're ready," Earl said. Quiet. Not cruel. Just true, the way a man states a fact about the weather. Bram's free hand slapped the mat 3 times, fast and desperate, the universal signal for enough, enough, enough. Earl released the instant it happened. No extra pressure held a beat longer than needed. No lingering over the win. No showmanship for the camera still recording by the door. He stood, offered Bram a hand up off the mat, and the whole room understood, watching that single small gesture, that the real loss here wasn't the pin at all. It was that hand, extended without hesitation. A man Bram had spent 3 weeks humiliating in public had just beaten him clean, and then helped him back to his feet, like it had cost him absolutely nothing. Somewhere, by the door, the shoulder camera's little red light stayed steady the entire time, having caught all 41 seconds clean from start to finish. Exactly the way the security camera above the mats would confirm later that same afternoon. Noah stepped forward before Bram could fully find his footing. Phone already raised in his hand, voice shaking with something caught between anger and pure relief. 75th Ranger Regiment, Noah said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear every word clearly. Reading straight off his screen, where he'd typed it out the night before. waiting for exactly this moment to arrive. He taught combatives to actual soldiers. For years, he turned, slow and deliberate, to face Bram, who was still catching his breath down on one knee. And Bram, tell them where your belt certificate ships from. The silence that followed carried a completely different weight than the silence before it had. Bram opened his mouth. Nothing useful came out of it. Clients wear our patch, Bram had told him once, weeks ago, sneering across that same marble counter. You wear a satchel. Know the difference. Earl looked at him now, calm, no satisfaction anywhere in his face, no gloating anywhere in his voice. I know the difference, Earl said. I've delivered it to you quarterly. Somebody in the crowd repeated that line under their breath to the person standing beside them, and it moved through the room like a current running along a wire, passed from mouth to mouth until half the lobby had heard it twice. Somewhere near the front, a folding chair creaked as the man who'd half risen finally sat back down, shaking his head slow in open disbelief. The mirror payoffs landed one after another after that, fast, undeniable, exactly where Bram could feel every single one of them settle. This is an elite facility, he'd shouted at Earl 3 weeks earlier, loud enough to embarrass an 8-year-old boy in front of strangers. Now half the parents in that lobby were staring straight up at his wall-sized certificate on the wall. And one father actually laughed out loud, short and disbelieving, at the sheer size of the frame surrounding a document that had come from a shipping address instead of an institution. Loading dock, he'd called Earl, sneering, that very first day. Now, Earl bent down unhurried and picked his mail tub back up off the counter in that same dead silence. And nobody left in that room could look at him and see anything at all but the only real instructor who had ever once set foot on those mats. At the front counter, the refund lines started forming before Bram had even fully climbed back to his feet. Not a rush, not a mob, just people quietly stepping into a line that hadn't existed 5 minutes before. Cashback forms already half filled out in some hands like they'd been carrying them around for days, just waiting for a good enough reason. And it wasn't Bram who spoke Kyla's name into that silence. It was the parents themselves, murmuring it to each other first, then saying it out loud with more confidence, asking if her Saturday class at the community center had room for one more student, telling each other plainly that she was the one who had actually taught their kids anything worth learning in the first place. Kyla stood near the mats, arms crossed, saying nothing at all, letting the room decide for itself what it had already quietly known for weeks. The video from that day racked up views fast once. Somebody uploaded the shoulder camera footage in full, no music laid over it. No editing at all, just 41 raw seconds and everything that came after. Comments filling up faster than anyone could moderate them. Most of them some version of the same 3 words. No way, or good, or finally. Somewhere on that street, in a town like 100 other towns scattered across this whole country, is a quiet man or woman who carries more than they ever mention out loud. A neighbor, a coworker, somebody who delivers your mail, bags your groceries, sits 2 stools down from you at the diner counter, and never once brings up what they used to do, or what they can still do if the moment ever asked it of them. The ask tonight is a simple one. See them clearly before somebody louder makes you laugh at them first. Hollister Elite Martial Arts didn't survive the season under that name. Within a month, the marble counter had a new sign hanging behind it, hand-painted, simple, no gold foil anywhere on it. Kyla Reeves running the program the way she'd always wanted to run it from the very beginning. Noah beside her, teaching the beginner classes with a patience Bram had never once managed to demonstrate in 3 years of ownership. The gold-plated belt display case came down off the wall. The wall-sized certificate came down right along with it. And nobody in that building ever asked out loud where either one of them ended up. Sadie tested for her yellow belt again, 3 weeks later. At the community center this time, no accelerated package required, no folding table full of upsells anywhere in sight. She landed every kick clean, same as before. Kyla handed her the belt herself, and the whole room clapped louder than it ever had at the old marble counter. The sporting goods store owner, who never called Bram back, sent Kyla a message instead, offering to sponsor the new youth program. Outright, no questions asked twice. She said yes before she'd even finished reading the whole message, and Bram Hollister, last anyone in Cedar Falls heard, had moved 2 towns over, working a sales floor somewhere that didn't ask about black belts. Nobody at the diner spent much time wondering about it after that. There wasn't much left to say. Milo asked his grandfather, weeks later, walking home from the community center with his gi bag slung over one shoulder, why he'd never mentioned any of it before. Not the Rangers. Not the teaching. None of it, Earl thought about that one a long moment, the same way he thought about most things worth answering right. Didn't seem like something to lead with, he said. A man's worth showing up, not talking about. Milo nodded slow, gi bag bumping against his hip with every step, and didn't ask anything else. He didn't need to. He'd already seen it once, in a lobby that used to have marble floors, and that was worth more than any story his grandfather could have told him first. A few people asked Earl afterward if he'd consider teaching officially, putting his name on a schedule somewhere, maybe even a small plaque by the door. He turned every offer down the same quiet way. Got a route to run, he'd say. And that was usually the end of the conversation, because nobody ever found much to argue with in it. Earl never taught a single class there, never signed anything, never took a title, never let anybody hang his name on a door or a business card. He didn't need to. He went back to his route. The very next Monday morning, same blue uniform pressed clean, same 11-year path through the same strip mall storefronts in the same familiar order, same quiet nod at the same faces behind the same glass doors. But on Saturdays now, an old mailman stands near the back wall of the community center, hands loose at his sides, watching a free class run by a woman who used to get her hours cut for having a spine when it mattered most. And in the front row, every single week without fail, is his grandson, standing in a stance that's starting, slowly, quietly, to look a whole lot like his own, weight even, hands loose, chin low. The same square shoulders that once stood between a boy and a man who never should have been laughing at either of them. The community center's mats aren't marble. The floor squeaks a little, and the heater rattles when it kicks on, and nobody's ever hung a gold-plated case on any of the cinder block walls. Nobody's missing the marble. Nobody's ever heard Earl raise his voice in that gym either. He doesn't need to. The kids listen anyway. The way kids always listen to the adult in the room, who's never once had to prove anything to anybody. Quiet strength doesn't announce itself at any front counter. It just keeps showing up, week after week, long after the loud men have finally run out of things left to say. Here's the question worth sitting with tonight. Long after this video ends, Earl knew for years exactly what those quarterly envelopes implied, and he stayed silent about all of it out of a mailman's plain, old-fashioned professional duty. Was exposing Bram publicly, in front of that entire packed lobby, the only real justice available to a man like Earl? Or should someone who has served his country and his community both have found a way to handle it privately instead, rank to rank, before it ever needed to go that far in front of everyone? Tell us below exactly where you land. If this story hit you, subscribe now. Share it with someone who respects quiet strength, and tell us in the comments which moment hit you the hardest. We will see you for the next story. It is already waiting.